Hi there, welcome to this video on Introduction to Git for AppDev 1 and AppDev 2 projects. In this first video, we'll be looking at some basics of Windows subsystem for Linux and give a very brief introduction to Git. Here's what's all covered in this video. Keep in mind, I'll be assuming that you guys are using a Windows system, which is hence why we are covering installation of WSL and usage of WSL. In case you are using a Linux based system or if you're using a Mac, you can ignore the first three parts of this video and go directly to the introduction to Git part. So let's first understand what is WSL. Wikipedia says that Windows subsystem for Linux is a feature of Windows that allows developers to run a Linux environment without the need for a separate virtual machine or a dual booting machine. So what this essentially means is that you can enjoy the comforts of Linux using your Windows system itself. Now, why is this useful? It is useful because when you use a virtual machine, you tend to lose out on performance, and when you dual boot, you get performance, but at the same time you risk losing your information and the system in general becomes slower. So this is a very convenient middle ground between using a virtual machine or dual booting it on bare metal. One good thing about this is that it is very easy to set up and use, and hence it barely takes any time to install WSL on your Windows system. Also, one more important thing is that it is essential for the AppDev 2 project, because when you will be implementing Redis caching, Windows does not support Redis caching. So you have no choice but to use a Unix based system. So WSL comes in there as well. Now let us look at installing WSL. In order for us to install WSL, we first have to enable the feature in Windows. So we have to open a menu called Turn Windows Features On or Off. So let us just do that right now. So let us open this, and once you scroll down, you'll see a feature called as Windows Subsystem for Linux, which is here. So we have to enable it. In my case, it is already enabled. If it is not enabled for you, make sure you enable it and make sure you press on OK, and then it might prompt you to restart your PC. Please do so and please come back to this video. After you're done with that, we can go ahead and install WSL. In order for us to do that, we can open PowerShell and run the following command. So let us just open PowerShell. So the command is WSL --install Ubuntu 22.04. So once we do this process might take a little time depending on your internet and system performance. So I'm just gonna skip this video until it is done installing, and I'll see you guys again. After it is done installing, you'll have to put in a Unix username. In my case, I'm just gonna use it. You put as demo, and a password. I'm just gonna keep a very simple password. So after this is done, it is gonna take some more time and set up everything for you. So I'll see you guys again when it is set up. Okay, now that it is set up, we can go ahead and check if Ubuntu is installed properly. So let's just run an echo command, and it does in fact say hi. So that means everything is set up and installed properly. Now that we have installed WSL, let us look at some basic Linux commands that is going to help us traverse through the Linux file system. Up first, we have the ls command. Ls command basically lists all the items in the directory. So let us do ls. We see that we have three files here: demo directory, main.py, and test.txt. Now this is a directory and it is shown in blue. You might have different colors in your system, but in just so happens that in my system it is a blue in color. So if we can use the cd command to go into the demo directory. And then up next we have the mkdir command. Mkdir command is used to make a new directory. So let us go back using cd double dots. So in this case, we were in the demo directory and we came back to the home directory here. So let us do mkdir directory _2. Let us just call our directory underscore 2, and if we do ls now, we see that there is a new directory called as directory underscore 2. Now let us check out the rm command. Let's say I want to delete the main.py file. So then I use rm main.py, and in that case the main.py will be deleted. If we try ls again, we see that the main.py file is not there. So these are some basic commands in file system traversal. Let us look at our next command called man command. Man stands for manual. So this video is about git, so let us try what man git gives us. And sure enough, it gives us a very handy manual which is about git. This is probably the best possible resource you can use as long as you can understand it. It's a little content dense, but it is a very good starting point to kind of check out what each command does, and you can use this for any command in Linux. So up next we have pwd. Pwd is basically shows us our present working directory. So in this case we have a directory called demo directory. So let us go into the demo directory. So cd demo directory, and then currently if we type pwd here, it's going to say that we are currently in the demo directory, in the home directory. Let us go up one step in our file system, and then let us traverse to the directory 2 now. And now if we type pwd, we see that the current working directory is actually now directory 2. For completeness sake, let us see what pwd does directly in the home directory, and sure enough it just shows us the file system path of home directory. Finally, now let us explore the /mnt directory in WSL. When you want to access the Windows file system of your Windows system using WSL, we use the /mnt directory. So let us just go into /mnt, and here if we do ls, we can see that the drives here are listed, and we also have 2 more, but let us not worry about that currently. So let us go to the C drive, and then if we press ls here, we see that we find our usual program file, the Windows file system, whatever is there, we find it here. So when you want to access your files that are there in the Windows file system, we can access it using the /mnt, and go on with the file system accordingly, Windows file system, wherever it is saved. So these are some basics of commands in Linux, and also the /mnt directory in Windows subsystem for Linux. So now that we know some basic commands in WSL, let us look at an IDE that we can use to do our app dev project in. In this case, we'll be using VS Code, but you can feel free to use any editor that you like, be it Vim, Emacs, Nano, or whatever other IDEs that are there. One thing to keep in mind is that in this case we are using VS Code because of how approachable it is. It is a popular IDE for both beginner and advanced developers, so it is a safe option for you to get started with. Some good things about VS Code is that it has a huge community behind it, so there's a lot of extensions that you can install. The IDE itself is built on open source, although it is distributed by Microsoft as a non-open source software. But you can access its open source code in GitHub if you search for it. It is also regularly updated and maintained, which is always a good thing, so that any bugs or anything is always patched in the latest version of the IDE. So let us look at ways to install VS Code in our Windows system. The install process is pretty simple. So let us go to code.visualstudio.com, and then you just download it and install it. One small thing to notice when you're installing is to make sure to enable add to path. So this basically enables us to run VS Code from WSL directly. So make sure you enable this, and if you want, you can also create a desktop icon. So once you've installed VS Code on the Windows system, let us go back to WSL here and then type code space dot. Here code itself refers to the VS Code IDE, and space dot dot represents the current working directory again. So let us press on enter, and for the when you're running it for the first time, it will install a server. So let's just come back once it is installed. Great. Now that it got installed, it opened VS Code under WSL basically. So and it's just gonna ask if it trusts the authors. Yes, I do trust the authors because it's my own personal system. And we can see that it is running under WSL, because if we hover on this, it is running on Ubuntu 22.04 and WSL 2. So this way we can actually use VS Code through WSL running on a Linux system in Windows. Now that we have some basic setup done, let us explore what version control means. Version control is a software that is used to track and maintain changes in code bases. This is especially helpful in large code bases and there is more than one person working on the same project. To give you a very simple example, imagine this, right? Raj has a portfolio website and he wants to redesign the homepage of this portfolio. When he does redesign it, he realizes that maybe the previous portfolio homepage looked better. Now he wants to revert back to the previous homepage. Well, in this case, it was good for Raj because Raj had set up a version control system. So for him, it was as simple as executing a single command in his terminal and all the changes were undone automatically. If Raj had not set up a version control as a backup, then he would have had to recode the original design from scratch. So I hope that gives you a basic idea of why we use version control. And this is also a good example of why you would want to use version control in your app dev project. Version control helps us to track changes in the code. It also helps us to collaborate, although in MAD1 and MAD2 project you are not expected to collaborate. And obviously it is a very good backup of our code as well, as given in the example. So then let's explore what is Git. Git is basically a distributed version control system that tracks changes in any set of computer files. Now this any set of the second part, which basically says any set of computer files, is important here because it is not necessary that we only back up code files using Git. Git can actually be used to back up and track any kind of file. It just so happens that the kind of work that us developers do is very in tune with what Git is trying to achieve. So version control becomes very important to what we do. It enables distributed and non-linear workflows when one or more developers are involved. And there is this one little misconception, especially in junior devs. Basically, like, what is the difference between Git and GitHub? Are they the same thing? So Git is basically a version control system, while GitHub is a platform that uses Git to create, store and maintain code bases. This is the same thing as telling that search engines are a class of software that is used to find web pages, and Google search is just one of the search engine, right? There's also Yahoo, there is Bing and whatnot. But Google search is one of the search engines. That also means that there is so many other platforms that uses Git for version control. Just to name a few, GitLab is one, Bitbucket is one, and there's many. I'm sure you can Google it. In this specific demo, we will be using GitHub as our platform of choice. Before we go, let us set some basic configuration settings. This is important to set because without setting this, it is not possible for us to commit any changes to even a local repository. So let us start by setting the configuration settings. So I have an instance of WSL running here. Before we start setting the configuration, let us just make sure Git is installed. By default, Git should be installed in your system along with WSL. In case if it is not, you can just type the following command: sudo apt install git. It's gonna ask you for the password. If you enter your password, it's gonna, in my case, it is automatically installed, so we are not going to reinstall it. So let me just clear my screen. Now we have to set the configuration. So git config global username and your name. So git config global user.name should be Ashwin, and then get config global user dot email One thing to make sure is to make sure you use your proper student email here. Make sure there is no typos, and make sure you use your own name. So let's just enter, and we are done. So we have done setting the configuration, and now we can go ahead and look at explore Git and look at some basic Git commands. So now let's look at some basic Git commands. Here we have 4 Git commands: git init, git status, git add, and git commit. Git init is actually used to initialize a Git repository, so you'll only be using it once for each repository. While git status, add, and commit are commands that you'll be using again and again and again with every with every change. Git status is basically used to check what is tracked and what is untracked. I'll be showing you a very quick demo after I go through the slide. Git add is used to add a file to the staging area, and git commit is used to record and confirm the change whatever you have done, and create a snapshot of it. Okay, so I have created a very simple folder called git demo. If we list the files of it, we see that there is 3 files here: hello.txt, main.py, and readme.md. So now let us initialize the Git repository. So for that, it is git init as previously seen, and it says initialize Git repository in the current directory and /git. You can ignore this for now. We will get to this later. So let's go check the git status, which basically tells us what is tracked, which file is tracked, which file is added to git, which file is not added to git. So here git status, so it is the master branch, no commits yet because it's an empty repository like it is mentioned here. And untracked files basically means that it is not added in the git tracking system yet. So there is 3 files, which makes sense because we have not added anything yet. So it also says here nothing added to commit but untracked file present, use git add to track. So let us try git add, and let us try to add readme.md. Now if we run git status, we see that the readme.md file is staged and it is yet to be committed. It has not been committed yet, but it is staged. And there is 2 more untracked files, which is hello.txt and main.py. Let us do one thing. Let us add everything to the staging area. We can do that using git add and dot here represents the current directory. So all the files in the current directory will be added to the staging area. Now if we try git status, we can see that all 3 files are added as part of the staging. Now what is left for us to do is to commit the changes. Now one thing about committing is it is always a good practice to commit something with a message, right? So it is always important for us to make sure what changes we are tracking by documenting it. So in this case, the syntax would be git commit -m, and then in double quotes we can put the commit. So I'll just name it initial commit for now and enter. So master initial commit, 3 files change, 3 insertions, which is readme.md, hello.txt, main.py. Makes sense, and this is exactly what we want. Now let us examine the contents of main.py. So we can use cat main.py. Cat is a command that is used to go through the contents of the file. And here we see that there is a typo here. There is 2 capital letters here. So let us try to fix that. So nano main.py. Hello world. So we save it. Now the thing is, we have made a change. So if we do git status now, we see that main.py has been modified. Why has it been modified? Because we changed the character from capital O to small o. So now obviously we have to do git so git add again, git add main.py, or you can do just git add dot as well. That is going to work as well. It's the same thing at this point because that's the only file that is not staged. So do that, and if we do git status again, we see that it has been staged, but it has not yet been committed. So if we do git commit, again important to have a good commit message. So typo fix, let's just name it that, then we do it. So typo fix, one file changed, one insertion and one deletion. One insertion, one deletion refers to the lines in the code here. Since our main.py had just one line of code, that line was deleted and inserted with the proper one. So this is a very basic demo of how Git works. So if you were not able, if this felt a little bit overwhelming for you, and it's totally fine, we'll be going up with a more in-depth example in our next in our next video. There is a bunch of more Git commands that is there: git log, git checkout, and git reset. Git log is used to show the history of commits. Git checkout is used to traverse between Git branches, and git reset is used to move to the repository to a previous commit. So if we go back to the example that was given here with Raj, so Raj could have used something like git reset to go back to a previous version of his repository. And this is not all Git has. It has so many more commands. It has so much more nuances inside the package itself. So it is always a good idea to go through GitHub documentation when you can. I've also added a link here. So when you can go through the GitHub documentation, it is always a good idea to know the software that you're actually using in and out. So that brings us to the end of this first video. In the next video, we'll be integrating GitHub into our pipeline, and we'll review the git commands, all the git init command, the git add, git status, all of these commands once more, and we'll also be taking more in-depth examples and use cases. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.